The vast bridge of the Vraxian flagship hummed with quiet tension as Ambassador Zethkar stared at the data screens. His 4 golden eyes moved in careful patterns, reading and rereading the simple transmission from the blue planet below. Prime. Numbers, basic geometry, elementary physics, nothing more. This cannot be correct, he muttered, his scaled fingers tapping against the command console. Around him, his crew worked silently, their movements precise and efficient. They had done this many times before. First contact with a new species always followed the same pattern. Science Officer Valthera glided across the bridge, her purple, tentacles flowing like water as she manipulated the holographic displays. The scans confirm it, Ambassador. Their technology is primitive by our standards. They use chemical rockets for space travel. Their computers are massive and slow. Their planet has over 200 separate governments. Zethkar nodded slowly. The Galactic Council had encountered thousands of species over the millennia. Most followed predictable development paths. First came basic mathematics, then simple space travel, then unified planetary government. These humans seemed to be stuck. In the early stages, what about their military capabilities? He asked. Limited, Valthera replied. They have weapons that use explosive chemicals and metal projectiles, some nuclear devices, but nothing that could threaten our ships. Their defensive systems are practically non-existent. The bridge fell silent, except for the soft hum of the ship's systems. Zethkar had seen this before, a young species just beginning to reach beyond their home world. Eager for contact but woefully unprepared for what lay in the galaxy beyond. The Council's job was to guide them carefully, sharing knowledge slowly to prevent cultural shock. Course for the 3rd planet, he ordered. Standard first contact protocols. We approach slowly, make no threatening moves, and wait for their response. The massive Vraxian fleet moved through space like a school of metal fish, their sleek hulls reflecting the light of the yellow star. Each ship was a masterpiece of engineering, powered by controlled antimatter reactions and protected by energy shields that could deflect most weapons in the galaxy. The flagship alone was larger than most human cities. As they reached the outer edge of the human solar system, Zethkar expected the usual response. Panic, frantic communications, military forces scrambling to respond to the alien threat. The sensors showed something entirely different. Sir, the communications officer reported, we are receiving a single transmission from the planet. Play it. The voice that came through the speakers was calm, almost casual. Hello there. This is Earth Traffic Control. We see you have some big ships out there. Please maintain current orbit while we send someone to talk. Zethkar's eyes blinked. In confusion, traffic control, they were treating the arrival of an alien fleet like it was routine space traffic. Are they not afraid? He asked. It does not appear so, sir. 20 minutes later, a small craft appeared on their sensors. It was tiny compared to the Vraxian ships. Its design simple and functional. No weapons were visible, no shields protected. It flew directly toward the flagship without hesitation. Incoming transmission, the communications officer announced. A human face appeared on the main screen. The being had smooth skin, dark hair, and only 2 eyes. He wore a simple uniform and smiled pleasantly. Greetings, the human said in heavily accented galactic standard. I am Kim Teho, representing Earth's diplomatic corps. Welcome to our system, Zethkar studied the human carefully. Kim Teho showed no signs of fear or nervousness. Small. Ship flew steadily toward the massive alien fleet as if it were the most natural thing in the world. Either these humans were incredibly brave or completely ignorant of the danger they faced. We come in peace, Zethkar responded, following the ancient protocols. Represent the Galactic Council of Civilized Worlds. We have traveled far to make contact with your species. Cool Teho replied with that same casual tone. Want. To dock. We have some people who would like to meet you. The word cool did not translate well, but Zethkar understood the meaning. The human was treating this historic moment like a routine meeting between neighbors. Most species would have been preparing for war or begging for mercy. These humans seemed bored. Your ship is very small, Zethkar observed. Are you not concerned? About your safety? Tejo glanced around his cramped cockpit and shrugged. This old thing gets me where I need to go. Besides, you said you come in peace, right? So no worries. The simple trust in the human's voice was remarkable. Zethkar had seen species develop complex defense systems, build underground bunkers, and unite their entire planet in fear of alien contact. These humans sent one man in a small ship to greet an entire fleet. We will arrange docking procedures, Zethkar said finally. We look forward to meeting your people. Great, Tejo said. Fair warning, though. Earth coffee is pretty strong. Hope you guys can handle it. As the transmission ended, Zethkar sat back in his command chair, more confused than ever. Something about these humans did not fit the usual pattern. They were either the most confident species he had ever encountered, or they had no idea what they were dealing with. Time would tell which was true. The great assembly hall of the Varaxian flagship buzzed with quiet conversation, as diplomats from 12 different species gathered for the monthly evaluation meeting. Ambassador Zethkar took his place at the curved table, his 4 eyes scanning the familiar faces around him. 3 months had passed since first contact with the humans, and it was time to decide their fate. Dr. Hinekara stood at the front of the room, her tall frame casting shadows across the holographic displays. As the Council's most respected xenobiologist, her words carried significant weight. She had spent decades studying new species, helping the Council decide which civilizations were ready for advanced technology and which needed more time to develop. The data is clear, she began, her voice echoing through the chamber. Humanity shows all the signs of a standard pre-space-faring species. Their planet remains divided into over 200 separate nations. They waste enormous resources on internal conflicts. Their manufacturing processes are crude and inefficient. The assembled diplomats nodded knowingly. They had seen this pattern countless times before. Young species almost always followed the same path: tribalism, resource competition, gradual unification, then finally peaceful expansion into space. What about their response to our technology demonstrations? Asked cultural analyst Kexvarn. Leaning forward with interest, Hinekara's expression grew troubled. This is where things become concerning. During our exchanges, the humans showed remarkably little curiosity about our achievements. When we demonstrated gravity manipulation, their chief negotiator Lee Minho simply smiled and said, "It was interesting." Zethkar remembered that meeting clearly. The Council had brought their most impressive technology, devices that could bend space-time itself, creating artificial gravity fields strong enough to crush mountains. Most species begged to understand how such miracles worked. The humans had watched politely, asked a few basic questions, then moved on to discussing trade agreements. We offered them medical technology that could extend their lifespans by centuries, Hinekara continued. Technology that took us millennia to develop. Minho thanked us and said they would consider it.
Consider it,
Gasped Commander Teichel. Of the Kepler Defense Fleet, my people would have given anything for such knowledge. The pattern continues throughout our interactions, Hinekara said, manipulating the holographic display to show recorded conversations. Park Ji-won there. Cultural attach showed the same indifference. When we demonstrated planetary terraforming, the ability to transform dead worlds into garden paradises, she called it an interesting approach. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Terraforming was considered one of the highest achievements of galactic civilization. The fact that humans treated it as merely interesting suggested they either did not understand what they were seeing, or they possessed a level of arrogance that bordered on dangerous. What about consciousness transfer technology? Asked Dr. Vexmorin, the Council's leading expert on digital sentience. We showed them our ability to transfer a being's consciousness from one body to another, Hinekara replied, effectively granting immortality. Park Ji-won said they would file it for review. Several diplomats made sounds of disbelief. Consciousness transfer was theoretical for most species, achieved by only a handful of the most advanced civilizations. To dismiss it so casually seemed impossible. Zethkar studied the data flowing across his personal display. The human responses were recorded in detail, their facial expressions analyzed, their body language interpreted. Everything suggested a species that was either completely overwhelmed by superior technology or utterly indifferent to it. What is your assessment of their cognitive capabilities? Their neural structure appears adequate but unremarkable, Heinekara answered. Brain scans show similar patterns to other species at their development level. They may simply lack the cognitive framework to truly understand advanced technology. This explanation made sense to most of the assembled diplomats. They had encountered species before whose minds could not grasp certain concepts until they had evolved further. It was one of the reasons the Council moved slowly with new civilizations. However, Heinekara continued, there are some unusual observations. During our technical exchanges, human students seem to grasp complex concepts very quickly.
Take what takes.
Other species decades to master, they understand in days or weeks. Perhaps they are good at mimicking without truly understanding. Suggested Kexfarn, possibly. But their questions are surprisingly sophisticated. They ask about theoretical applications and potential improvements that suggest deep understanding. Zethkar found this puzzling. The humans truly understood the technology being shared with them. Why did their leaders show such indifference? It was as if the species was divided between brilliant students and unimpressed administrators. There's one more thing, Heinekara added. During our demonstrations, our sensors detected unusual energy signatures from human observers. Brief spikes in electromagnetic activity that we cannot explain. Equipment malfunction, asked Teichel. We checked multiple times. The readings are consistent but inexplicable. The meeting continued for another hour, with diplomats sharing their observations and concerns. The humans remained polite and cooperative, but their attitude toward advanced technology was unlike anything in the Council's experience. Finally, Zethkar called for a vote. All in favor of classifying humanity as a developing species, suitable for limited technology sharing and cultural exchange, the vote was unanimous. The Council would establish a monitoring station in the outer solar system and begin the standard integration protocols. They would share basic technologies slowly, watch for signs of social development, and wait for humanity to show proper appreciation for what they were being offered. As the meeting ended, none of the diplomats noticed the subtle inconsistencies. In their own data, they missed the implications of human students mastering advanced concepts so quickly. They ignored the sophisticated questions that revealed understanding far beyond what should have been possible. Most importantly, they failed to consider that perhaps the humans were not indifferent to their technology at all. Perhaps they were simply being polite, Captain. Morthok adjusted his protective goggles as he prepared for another routine demonstration aboard the Varaxian science vessel. The laboratory was filled with the soft hum of advanced equipment, holographic displays casting blue light across the polished metal surfaces. Today's lesson would focus on quantum crystalline structures. One of the most complex technologies in the Council's arsenal, the human research team stood quietly around the central table, their simple clothing and basic recording devices making them look primitive compared to the sophisticated Varaxian scientists. Dr. Choi Sujin, their leader, smiled pleasantly as she waited for the demonstration to begin. Today we will explore quantum crystalline formation, Morthok announced, his three-fingered hands dancing across the holographic interface. These structures can store massive amounts of energy while maintaining perfect stability. The display showed a complex three-dimensional lattice, its geometric patterns shifting and pulsing with contained power. Morthok had spent decades mastering this technology, and it never failed to impress visitors from less advanced species. The lattice formation requires precise harmonic resonance, he explained, manipulating the controls to show the delicate balance needed. Each quantum field must vibrate at exactly the right frequency. It took our scientists 3 centuries to achieve stable configurations. Sajin stepped closer to the display, her dark eyes studying the patterns with interest. The harmonic frequencies create interference patterns that strengthen the overall structure. Exactly, Morthok replied, pleased that at least one human seemed to understand. The interference patterns are what make the crystal stable. Without them, the entire structure would collapse in microseconds. Oh, like this, Sujin interrupted, her fingers moving across the interface with surprising confidence. Morthok watched in shock as the crystal structure began to reform under her guidance. The geometric patterns shifted, the quantum fields realigned, and suddenly the stability readings began climbing. The crystal was not just stable, it was more stable than anything Morthok had ever seen. How did you... ... He started, then stopped, as the readings continued to climb. The stability rating was now 3 times higher than the theoretical maximum. This is impossible. Lucky guess, Sujin said with a cheerful smile. Our computers ran some quick calculations while you were explaining. Morthok examined the readings more carefully. The calculations required to achieve this level of optimization were incredibly complex, involving thousands of variables and quantum probability matrices. The Council's most advanced computers would need weeks to process such data. Your computers did this in seconds, he asked, trying to keep his voice steady. Basic processing, Sujin replied casually. Nothing special. That evening, Morthok filed a detailed report with the Council. The incident was noted, discussed briefly, then filed away as an interesting anomaly. Perhaps the humans had stumbled onto something by accident, or maybe their computers were more capable than initial scans suggested. But similar incidents began accumulating across the galaxy. Human materials scientists produced alloys that combined properties in ways that violated known physics, or medical techniques, while appearing crude and primitive, achieved healing rates that matched or exceeded Council standards. Most puzzling of all, their spacecraft continued to demonstrate fuel efficiency that should have been impossible with their apparent technology level. Dr. Velinara, a Council metallurgist, reported finding human-made materials that were somehow both incredibly strong and perfectly flexible. They claim it's basic chemistry, she told her colleagues. But the molecular structure is beyond our understanding. Medical Officer Thicksbowl documented human surgical techniques that healed wounds in hours instead of days. They use simple tools and basic medicines, he reported. Yet their patients recover faster than ours do with advanced regeneration technology. Each time Council scientists questioned these achievements, the humans offered the same simple explanations. We got lucky. Basic engineering, nothing special. Their casual attitude toward breakthrough discoveries was becoming increasingly disturbing. The situation reached a breaking point when pirates attacked the human colony on Kepler 4 for DB. The Crimson Talon gang was notorious throughout the sector, their ships equipped with military-grade weapons and energy shields. They had successfully raided dozens of colonies, and no single planet had ever mounted an effective defense. Ambassador Zethkar was in his office when the distress signal arrived. Council's emergency protocols kicked in immediately, with fleet commanders calculating response times and available ships. The nearest Council forces were 6 hours away, too far to prevent a massacre. We should contact the humans, suggested his aide. Warn them about the attack. Prepare a rescue fleet, Zethkar ordered. We may arrive too late to prevent the initial assault, but we can help with evacuation and medical treatment. The Council fleet was still preparing for departure when a second transmission arrived. Colonel Yoon Jamin appeared on the communication screen, his uniform crisp and his expression calm. Situation resolved, he reported matter-of-factly. Standard security protocols have been implemented. The colony is secure. Zethkar stared at the screen in confusion. Resolved? The attack just began 17 minutes ago. Yes, sir. The pirates have been neutralized. Colony damage is minimal. We appreciate the Council's concern, but no assistance is needed. What kind of weapons did you use? Zethkar asked, his voice tight with suspicion. Basic defensive systems, Jamin replied with the same casual tone the humans always used. Nothing fancy, but the energy signatures detected by Council sensors told a very different story. The readings showed weapons discharge patterns that were unlike anything in the known galaxy. The pirates had been eliminated with precision and efficiency that suggested technology far beyond what humans should possess. As the communication ended, Zethkar sat back in his chair, a cold feeling growing in his chest. Something was very wrong with the official assessment of humanity's capabilities. The red alert klaxon screamed through the corridors of the Council Defense Station as emergency reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Admiral Vexscaler stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the tactical display with growing horror. Red markers appeared and disappeared as Council worlds fell one by one to the advancing Kethmori Empire. Any ships do they have? He asked his tactical officer. Unknown, sir. Their fleet appears to be using some kind of cloaking technology. We can only detect them when they attack. Vexcalaire had fought many battles in his long career, but nothing had prepared him for this. The Kethmori had struck without warning, their invasion fleet appearing simultaneously at dozens of star systems. Their technology was unlike anything in the Council's databases, shields that adapted to incoming weapons, torpedoes that could bend spacetime, ships that seemed to phase in and out of normal reality. Sir, we're receiving orders from High Command, the communications officer reported. All available fleets are to gather at the Nexus system for a final defensive stand. The Nexus system was strategically vital, containing the main hyperspace junction that connected the outer colonies to the Council homeworlds. If it fell, the Kethmori would have a clear path to the heart of galactic civilization. 3 days later, the Council's third fleet took position around the Nexus star. Vexillar counted his ships grimly. 47 vessels, including his own heavy cruiser. Against them came the Kethmori war machine, their dark ships emerging from hyperspace like metal nightmares. All ships prepare for battle, Vexcalaire commanded. This is where we make our stand. The battle began badly and grew worse. The Council weapons struck the Kethmori shields and simply disappeared, their energy absorbed and redirected. The enemy's quantum torpedoes tore through Council defenses like they were made of paper. Within minutes, 3 Council ships were destroyed, their crews vaporized in brilliant explosions. Sir, the enemy shields are adapting to our weapons, reported the tactical officer. Each shot we fire teaches them how to defend against the next one. Vexillar watched another ship die, its hull cracking like an egg under concentrated fire. The Kethmori moved with perfect coordination, their vessels flowing around Council formations like water around stones. They seemed to know exactly where each defender would be before they moved. Admiral, we're being overwhelmed, his first officer said quietly. Perhaps we should consider retreat, Vexillar replied firmly. If we fall back, they'll reach the homeworlds within days. We hold here, or civilization dies. The battle continued for another hour, with the Council forces steadily losing ground. Ship after ship fell to the Kethmori advance, their desperate final transmissions filling the communication channels with static and screams. Then something unexpected happened. Sir, the communications officer called out, we're receiving a transmission from ... human vessels. Vexcalaire looked up from the tactical display in confusion. Humans here. On the main screen, a young woman in a simple blue uniform appeared. Her ship was visible in the background, small, unremarkable, with clean lines and no obvious weapons. The nameplate read Quiet Morning in both human script and galactic standard. Admiral, the woman said with a pleasant smile, I'm Captain Han Bialna. We're in the area maintaining trade route security. Mind if we help out? Vexcalaire's desperation overcame his confusion. 3 human ships had appeared on his sensors, tiny craft that would barely register as fighters compared to the massive Kethmori warships. But at this point, he would accept help from anyone. Any assistance would be appreciated, Captain, he managed to say. What happened next defied every law of physics Vexcalaire understood. The human ships moved like living creatures, flowing through space with impossible grace. They seemed to anticipate Kethmori attacks before they were launched, sliding away from incoming fire with perfect timing. The first human ship fired a single beam of pale blue light. It struck a Kethmori battleship's adaptive shield and simply passed through, as if the protection wasn't there. The enemy vessel exploded in a sphere of white fire. Impossible, whispered the tactical officer. Those shields were adapting to our heaviest weapons. The second human ship performed a maneuver that made Vexcalaire's head spin. It seemed to fold space around itself, appearing instantly behind 3 Kethmori cruisers. 3 more beams of light, 3 more explosions, but it was the coordination that truly amazed him. The human ships moved as if they shared a single mind, executing complex maneuvers without any visible communication. They flowed around each other in perfect harmony, their attacks timed to the Mukrund. The Kethmori, who had been systematically destroying the Council fleet, suddenly found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand.
They're adaptive.
Shields were useless. Their quantum torpedoes missed targets that seemed to know exactly where the weapons would strike. Their perfect coordination crumbled as human ships appeared and disappeared unpredictably. Commander, came a panicked transmission from the Kethmori flagship. We're taking heavy casualties. These vessels are using unknown technology. Request immediate retreat. Within minutes, the entire Kethmori fleet was fleeing, their dark ships, disappearing into hyperspace as quickly as they had arrived. The humans had turned a hopeless defeat into a complete victory. "Well, that was exciting," Bielena commented as the last enemy ship vanished. "Haven't seen tech like that in a while." Vexscaler stared at the tactical display, trying to process what he had witnessed. "Captain, what did you just do?" "Helped out," she replied with that same casual smile. "Pretty routine, actually. You should probably file some paperwork about this." The human ships departed as casually as they had arrived, leaving the Council fleet floating in space among the debris of their enemies. Vexscaler sat in his command chair, his mind reeling with questions that he was afraid to ask. The Great Council chambers had never been so quiet. Ambassador Zethkar stood at the center of the circular hall, his four eyes burning with anger and confusion. Around him, representatives from dozens of species sat in stunned silence, their various forms of communication devices recording every word. "We demand answers," Zethkar declared, his voice carrying across the vast space. The echo seemed to bounce off the crystalline walls forever before fading into silence. At the human delegation table, Ambassador Lim Dehain looked up from her notes with genuine surprise. Her simple black suit and plain appearance made her seem almost ordinary compared to the exotic aliens surrounding her. Behind her sat three other humans, all wearing the same calm expression. "About what?" Dehain asked, her voice soft but clear. "About what happened at Nexus?" Zethkar shouted, his scaled fists striking the podium. "About your technology, about everything you have been hiding from us." Dehain exchanged glances with her colleagues. Dr. Song Haijin, the science advisor, shrugged slightly. Colonel Yang Minho, the military representative, remained perfectly still. The third human, a cultural expert named Kim Soo-won, simply smiled. "We have not been hiding anything," Dehain said patiently. "We have answered every question you have asked." "Those ships," Zethkar pressed, stepping closer to the human table, "their capabilities were impossible. You have been lying to us about your technological development." "We have not lied," Dehain replied, her tone remaining calm despite the accusation. "We have shown you exactly what you asked to see. When you asked about our computers, we showed you computers. When you asked about our weapons, we showed you weapons. When you asked about our ships, we showed you ships." Dr. Hinekara, the Council's leading xenobiologist, leaned forward in her seat. Her tentacles writhed with agitation as she spoke. "But the vessels at Nexus were nothing like what you showed us. They moved in ways that should be impossible. They destroyed ships that our best weapons could not even scratch." "You never asked about our military vessels," Colonel Yang interrupted, speaking for the first time since the session began. "You asked about our civilian technology, our cultural achievements, our diplomatic capabilities. We showed you those." The pieces began falling into place for Zethkar. The casual dismissal of Council technology was not ignorance. It was politeness. The simple explanations were not limitations. They were deliberate understatements. The fragmented governments were not a weakness. They were a choice. You have been ... Zethkar's voice cracked as the full implications hit him. "You have been pretending to be primitive, not pretending?" Dehain corrected gently. "We have been considerate. When you meet someone new, you do not immediately show them everything you are capable of. That would be rude." Cultural analyst Kexvarn spoke in a whisper that somehow carried across the silent chamber. "The internal conflicts we observed on your planet... Training exercises," Yang confirmed matter-of-factly. "How else would we prepare for external threats? The inefficient resource allocation we documented... We call it having enough," said Dr. Song, speaking up for the first time. "When you can produce anything you need, efficiency becomes less important than sustainability." The Council sat in stunned silence, as the implications sank in. Humanity had not been attempting to impress anyone because they did not need to. They were so far beyond the Council's understanding that they had been essentially playing pretend, like adults humoring children. Your casual attitude toward our greatest achievements, whispered Dr. Hinekara. You were not impressed because... Because we have similar technologies, Daheen admitted. Some of them are quite elegant in their simplicity. We were genuinely interested in your approaches to common problems. The quantum crystal formations? Gasped Captain Morthok from the back of the chamber. Dr. Choi improved our design in seconds. She was being polite, Yang said. Your harmonic resonance approach was interesting, but we solved similar problems differently long ago. Ambassador Tyschel of the Kepler Defense Fleet stood shakily. The pirates at Kepler 442b were eliminated in 17 minutes. We thought you had gotten lucky. Standard response time for that type of threat, Yang replied. We try to minimize collateral damage, so we move quickly. So what now? Zethkar asked quietly, his anger replaced by something closer to fear. Dahan smiled, and for the first time it seemed genuinely warm. Now we continue as we have been. Trade, cultural exchange, friendship. Just because we are different does not mean we cannot get along. The balance of power in the galaxy. What balance? Dahan asked. We never wanted power over you. We just wanted to be neighbors. You could have conquered us all, Zethkar said. Why would we want to do that? Kim Suan asked, speaking for the first time. Conquest is wasteful. We prefer cooperation. But you watched us struggle. You let us believe we were superior. We offered help when you asked for it, Dahane pointed out. We shared our knowledge when you were interested. We defended you when you were threatened. What more did you want? As the council's session ended, Zethkar realized they had been living in a galaxy where humanity was the apex predator all along. They just never bothered to mention it because they did not think it was important. And somehow, that restraint was the most terrifying thing of all.